welcome everybody to Dharma Punx. This week we have the youth room. So we're inviting some different elements of sound and sense pleasure and so, just making that a part of our practice today, being able to not bother the sound, as the sound is going to come and want to bother us. John, I saw somebody walking that way. This week's topic is on generosity. In an attempt to sort of move away from some topics over the past couple weeks that have been more dreary. I'm trying to juxtapose it a little bit with some lightness, and I figured one of the ways that we could talk about that is through the concept in Buddhism called dana. That's the Pali term for generosity. So what is generosity in Buddhism? Unlike I feel like often generosity is a convenience in our culture. Like we give when we're able, and it's convenience, and when maybe we have some leftovers to give away. And generosity in the Buddhist practice is asking us to make it a practice, to make it a skill that we hone, that we develop. And in one of the Buddhist suttas, the simile, he compares dana as comparable to a skilled archer, a master archer, which is kind of a strange metaphor. Like, how does archery and Buddhism and generosity parallel at all? And it's the way that it's described is because it is a skill. And, if I'm not an archer, were to go and pick up a bow and arrow and try to shoot a target expertly, I would probably not be able to do so. And so, just so with our generosity practice, it is expected that if we would like to have the full gains of generosity, that we too have to practice as if we were trying to be like a master archer. And so some of the things that are expected that the Buddha talks about as being the plus to generosity is we ourselves become more confident. We become more stable in in other aspects of our meditation practice. And in particular, one of the things that I found interesting is they talk about us becoming more prosperous, which feels weird. Like, what? Like, I'm going to get more money? And, being able to break that down a little bit further, like, yes, on some level, it is talking about material gains that people, if we think about people who are typically known for their generosity, they're not usually people without, unless that is their practice, is to be without. They're usually people who have some level of their needs met. And so that sort of being that maybe karmic aspect of prosperity. Also relationships. I know that in my own practice, being a person who attempts to hone that skill of generosity, it has strengthened a lot of my relationships. Being able to give to others, and people knowing me as a person, as a resource that I can provide maybe some insights on, you know, certain areas of the system, or certain knowledge about different aspects of life that has connected me with a lot more people than I would have expected. So that's an interesting way to look at it, and it also, it sort of subverts the scarcity mindset when we are honing that practice of generosity. Because if I think for myself, what is one of the reasons that I don't want to be generous? It's typically because I feel like I don't have enough. Like I don't have enough in my cup to give to others. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes, you know, in fact, I just need to, you know, preserve what little I have in my cup. You know, this is my last spoon, whatever. But oftentimes that's a delusion. That if I'm giving in the way that that our practice wants us to give, then it shouldn't actually take anything from my cup, period. I should actually feel more full after giving. And so that's something to also consider, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about when, you know, through the Dharma talk, is sort of how to give in a way that doesn't make us feel depleted, because I think that's one of the big myths of generosity is, yeah, how do we give when we have nothing inside of us? So that is the intro for today. I've been more generous with my questions today. So I have 3 that I will pose. I know. I'm going to be generous with the time for all of you to discuss it as well. The first question is, how has others' generosity benefited your own life? So on some level, you know, we've all been on the receiving end of generosity at one point or another. I know in my own practice, it's something that my mind likes to tell me, is that I'm alone, that I don't have anybody, that nobody ever helps me. And, you know, maybe there are times and periods where that's true, but it's also important for me to recollect that it's not the whole truth, that there have been times in my life that people have been generous. And so allowing ourselves to recollect and delight in that by sharing with whomever's in your group. The second question is to share a time you were generous that felt really good. I think that on some level, we've all experienced that sort of spectrum of generosity of like, yeah, I gave something and it was like, whatever. And then there were other times that I gave something and it really just warmed something inside of me. And so maybe, and then pairing that with the third question, which is, when does giving feel challenging or transactional? So being able to maybe do some exploration and comparison, like what about this moment that felt really fucking good to give was different than like I walked away from that gift, from that giving, leaving me just like, fuck that, dude. So I'll repeat the questions once more. How has others' generosity benefited your own life? Share a time you were generous that felt good. And when does giving feel challenging or transactional? Okay. So, yeah, dyads maybe. There's a a group of 3 in there. Pause the Blair's gonna stay out in her car, but I told her to text you if she wanted to come back in. So, okay. All right. Shall we meditate? The good old tuba meditation. Classic. Spoken about in the suttas. This is going to be fun.
An elaborate practice.
Finding a way to sit that is upright without being rigid or stiff. Slowly scanning the muscles in the face, relaxing any tension around the eyes and the jaw. And the tongue. Relaxing the shoulders. As if all your muscles were hanging from the vertebrae like a coat on a hanger. Finding contact with the breath. Letting the breath be your anchor. And despite maybe all of the distractions in the room, making a determination to dedicate the merit of this meditation to somebody you care about. Or maybe if you're interested in softening the heart around a specific topic, choosing somebody who you do have love for, but maybe a little bit of resentment, and setting an intention to be generous, to give in this untraditional way. By being firm with our breath and our meditation. Maybe today we're not doing it for us to get better, but for somebody else. Once you've established your intention and maybe made a home with the breath, opening from ignoring to the sense doors, sights, sounds, taste, touch, mind. Our meditation practice shouldn't be rarefied. It's not different than any other time in our lives. And so how do we relate to the sound? Are we meeting it with aversion, hatred, craving for quiet? Craving for more tuba? As Ajahn Chah once said, the sound is not bothering me, I'm going out and bothering the sound. Maybe noticing how the mind wants to fixate on certain senses. Awareness being pushed around from one room to the next, pulled in every direction. Can you find your home with the breath? noticing how with each new sense contact, a perception develops. We instantly start drawing outlines to create certainty about things we know. And then we color in those lines with our own narratives, our judgments, our stories. Until we created a whole self of suffering. Watching as the sense contact births a whole thought pattern stream. Maybe asking yourself, what would be generous in this moment? What would be a generous perception? A generous position? Coming back to the breath and the intention that you set at the beginning of the meditation. Who you were dedicating the merit to. If that was around somebody maybe a little contentious, investigating if there's been a softening or not. Investigating whether or not it impacts our meditation differently when we know we're doing it for more than just ourselves. I feel like we deserve I survived the Dharma Punx youth room meditation today. I was trying to think, I was like, wow, have I ever sat through a meditation this noisy? And I was like, India. Reminded me of, and I'd be curious to know if anybody else had this experience so you would think the place where the Buddha got enlightened, the Bodhi tree, would be this very serene and tranquil place. It's like one of the loudest fucking places on the planet. It's so loud. So you think you're gonna go there and meditate and have this like really, spiritual moment. And it's spiritual. But yeah, it's really loud. And I think one of the fascinating things that I found was when I was able to let go of the aversion to that, I could almost like see the home base so much more clearly, because it was like there was like so much happening outside that I was like, oh, like I can see the quiet almost better. I don't know if anybody else was able to maybe have some of that experience, but I think that's one of the cool things that learning to let go of the craving and the aversion can do, is to be able to be like, oh, like there's all this chaos, there's the peace. Found it. It's not as Where's Waldo as maybe some other meditations. But this talk is supposed to be about generosity, not sound. With generosity, sort of just maybe I'll begin with on that trip. I was reflecting as you all were talking about a time when somebody was generous to me, and I know that in my meditation or throughout my life, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of generosity. And when I was recollecting, one of the things that in particular that I found surprising that stood out the most was something so small. It was this really beautiful moment we had so I know I've talked about several times having gone, and we got to go to some of these places that are named in the suttas, and one of the places is called Vulture's Peak. And so you climb up this mountain, and we were doing a photo op by some cave, and and this I think she was Korean. This Korean woman was like really excited. Like, we couldn't speak the same language, right? She didn't speak any English, but she was like really excited by me, and maybe it was like my tattoos or something like that. But she really wanted to get a picture with me, and so she comes up and she stands next to me and she grabbed my hand, and I can't tell you what it was about that moment that just felt like pure just love, human love. Like, I couldn't really understand anything this person was saying. But I think about some of the times that maybe I felt like I was given something really beautiful. And, like that woman probably, like, she got her little photo op. She had no idea what, like the impact that had on me. But, I coming in with my own sort of perceptions of like, oh, I'm just like this Westerner, and I've got like these tattoos, so they're probably going to think I'm weird or scary or something. But to be met with such pure love was a really beautiful experience. And so that sort of dovetails well into the Buddha, as he does, gives a list of certain ways you can give, and he lists them in order of like most important or most valuable, will create the most merit. And I found it to be a pretty surprising read, because the first like 10 or so are like, this kind of person or that kind of person, but then it goes off on, it's probably about maybe 12 in, he goes, building a monastery would be pretty cool of you to do. But then, it takes an interesting turn, because, that to me, that feels pretty significant. Like, fucking building a giant monastery for people. Like, that's not a simple task, because it's more than just, a brick and mortar. That's like little houses too, little kutis, and all kinds of stuff. But more than, what would create more merit than that, he talks about feeding the Sangha. Just like feeding people. And then from there, he says going for refuge, which is taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So more than maybe gifting somebody a monastery, me, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha is more valuable than gifting, And then he goes further into the 5 precepts. So what are the 5 precepts? The 5 precepts are not stealing from people, not lying to people, not using our sexual energy in a harmful way, not drinking or using intoxicants. And so really honing in on our moral ethical, and how that can be a really valuable way to give to others. And I there's more, and I'll keep going, but I feel like that's such an important thing because, especially sort of on the political spectrum of things, you know, I think that's something that I've seen myself and a lot of other people really get hammed up in is like, well, what do I do? What do I do? Like, there's all this fucking heinous shit happening. Like, what can I do? And sometimes, you know, there is really real action we can take and we should take, and but also recognizing the way that our just committing to taking refuge, committing to the 5 precepts, doing these things are actually just as radical as going out and maybe taking, you know, some sort of action. And I feel in my own practice that to be true, because when seeing other people do that inspired me so much to change and create, you know, continue to create generosity. You know, this ripple effect happened, that me seeing other people who were taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, other people who were showing up with the 5 precepts, you know, has made a cascade of different generosity in my own life. So I think, you know, not underselling how much these little things can go, and that, you know, if we're in a space in our lives that maybe we're unable to maybe take more significant big actions because, you know, we're strapped for cash and we need to work, and, you know, we got to do this or that to just survive this hellscape, that doing this work is also enough. But that's not all. So more than the 5 precepts. This one's a little fun. He said, developing love even just as long as a pull of a cow's udder. I don't really know a lot about milking cows, but I'm guessing that is something that is fairly quick. Should the cat know? Okay, do you know anything about milking cows?
Yes.
Okay, would you?
I grew up on a dairy farm.
Okay, would you mind sharing?
Well,
Sorry to put you on the
if
spot.
do it manually, it's a bit. It takes quite a bit of time.
Okay.
But then they have milking machines.
Okay.
Just basically these big suction cups that you put on the udders, and they kind of do the thing for you, and it sucks all the milk into a vacuum system and dumps it into a tank. But it usually takes, I don't know, if I remember right, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever.
Okay. So if you could develop love for 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. Just that long.
That's what I remember.
That could be more significant than taking the 5 precepts and taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. That loving kindness is such a radical aspect of our practice. You know, how many people do you know personally? You know, at least before I started coming into Buddhist circles, the people that I knew personally that I felt like had a true sense of loving kindness and not just maybe this superficial love was pretty rare. I don't know if that might be other people's experience, but encountering like true care and true love without sort of a other intention or superficiality was pretty rare for me. The final one. So more than that much love, 15, 20 minutes. Developing the perception of an impermanence for as long as a finger snap. Okay, I know a little bit about those. That's pretty fast. So I think it's interesting that he sets the bar so low. You know, not like, you have to know impermanence forever. It's just, if you can develop the perception of impermanence for that long, that is the ultimate gift, he says, that you can give. And so, it's something to maybe just sit and reflect on in our own lives when we're relating to generosity. You know, I think that for me, before coming into this practice, generosity was all typically, as we talked about in the question, maybe more superficial, more transactional. You know, if you get this, then I get that. You know, being able to sort of subtly manipulate my world and the people around me, so that way, if I'm doing something for them, maybe they'll, give me a little something, something later, right? And, that's okay. I think that's a whole list that I could get into, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to complicate generosity that much right now. But, there are thresholds of, like, intention, and any giving is good, right? Even if it's got some kind of shit intentions behind it, right? But being able to more often find ways to give that aren't just from that superficial place. One of the things that an early mentor told me that I think really has helped me sustain some kind of relationship to generosity, because I just be forgetting sometimes, right? Like, you just get caught up with life and you're like, when was the last time I thought, even considered generosity? It takes a pretty strong mental effort for me to bring that to the forefront of my mind, to remember that it's important. And so what was given to me by an early mentor was trying to do something for myself every day. So generosity to self. How often are we generous to ourselves? Are we the type of person to just, try to give and give and give to others, but not really give to ourselves? Are we worthy of giving to of receiving? So giving to ourselves, giving to others, and doing something for my practice. Trying to do each of those three things every day. And I think when I initially took on this practice, it was a lot more like I had to journal it, I had to have a lot of intention, like, okay, like, what am I going to do today for somebody else? I had to think pretty hard about it. But the more that I've just begun to build my life in a way where I don't have to really think about it as much. I have positioned my life in such a way that it would be more surprising if I didn't have an opportunity to give that day. And, they talk about employment being maybe a lower level of giving. So some people maybe in the helping industry or the service industry, like, yeah, it counts, you get the karma, but because you're also sort of, you're not giving just cause. You're giving because you want the check. Maybe also a little bit of, but it's hard to just separate those two. And so I think that it's important to remember that if that is a part of your livelihood, to not use that as a cop-out to not give. Because, I know my own relationship as, having done substance use disorder counseling, that doesn't bring me the same kind of joy as the more spontaneous giving that I can do in my life. Like showing up early to, give the monks food, or helping people individually, or whatever the situation might be, doesn't necessarily feel as fulfilling, because I know I'm only there for, not only, I shouldn't say only, but it is a different thing. I'll end with maybe a few drawbacks. Maybe not necessarily drawbacks of generosity, because there oughtn't be, but some pitfalls that maybe are commonly fallen into, which for me, I touched a little bit on it, is that sort of over giving, that overly giving mentality, because remembering that if I'm giving from a place that is, from the heart, that is holistic, it's not going to take anything from my cup. That's one of the best signs for me that I know that the giving is wrong, is if I start to feel a resentment. Like, I'm sure maybe many people have been sort of on the end of that, where like you were on the hook for something and suddenly you're just like, fuck that. And so being able to, maybe in some cases, I can't make a sweeping statement, right? But like in some cases, like you just kind of got to get over to the other side and it'll be fine. But often it's an indicator that maybe I'm going outside of my own boundaries, that I'm giving in a way. And it's usually because I'm pouring into somebody's cup who's like got a hole in it, right? Like you just like know that like you're going to show up and you're going to like pour everything that you have into that. And it's just going to fall all onto the floor and be virtually a waste of time. And again, there is actually suttas in Buddhism that sort of addresses the types of people we give to, and like what kind of merits that give, and so that's something to consider as well. When we are sort of in that position of giving, who are we giving to? Not that like there are people necessarily more deserving than others, but like, if we're expecting to sort of get that fulfillment from, somebody who's just kind of like what do they call it? Like an energy vampire. Mm-hmm. Be careful. So, I think finally I was on retreat in New Mexico several years ago. And one of the really beautiful analogies my teacher gave was about the earth ships. I don't know if anybody's heard of the earth ships down there. So we had gone out and gotten to see the earth ships, and we talked about how sometimes our practice can be like we're building out our own earth ship. We're taking all of these materials and we're building something up that is going to be sustainable and lasting. And eventually we need to like look up from our own little Earth ship and start looking around at other people's Earth ships and start helping them build their Earth ships. I think that's a really important aspect, I think, in Sangha, because we have such a strong emphasis on community, Sangha, do things, we need that. But it's also such a individual path in some ways, being able to do, nobody can meditate for you. And I find a lot of people, including myself, kind of getting stuck in that sort of like, I'm just going to meditate and look at my own navel and not look up and see who else needs some help in their Earth ship. So, and I think also in that vein, sort of tying that back to the beginning of, we often don't think we are good enough. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, my Earth ship's shit. How can I help somebody else build their Earth ship? Who the fuck cares? I'm sure they would rather have help than like, just be like, oh, sorry, just like, I'm just not that good at it. Like, that sucks. So, just an encouragement to, even if you have a little bit, to give it away. Questions, comments? Felt like I could actually kind of go on a roll there for a minute after all the sound was like not taking me like, oh. Nah. Well, let me tell you about Donna. There's a $5 to $10 suggested donation for rent, or if you have less, give less. If you have more, give more. Ultimately, these Dharma Punx is freely offered, so as should be the Buddhist teachings. Anything above and beyond those costs goes to the mothership against the stream, or any other expenses that Dharma Punx might be incurring. Yes, so John, are you able, probably not, I meant to do this, to drop a link into the chat for Venmo? No. Another day. Another day. Okay, so yeah, Cash App, Venmo. I think that's it. Oh, next week, going to be going to the monastery, so please still show up. There will be a peer-led support meeting with a topic that is going to be a surprise and mysterious. So yeah, please still show up. There will be something still happening, hopefully in our usual spot. All right, so with that, if you would like to put your hands together in Anjali, you may. If that's too weird to do in a church, that's totally fine. May any merit that we've gathered here today be spread above and below, to the seen and the unseen, to those being born and to those who are dying. Thank you, everybody.
I think I misheard you. You said you're going to be at the monastery, but there will be also, in addition, a class here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there will still be more of a peer-led style group happening.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, man. What? Abayagiri.
Oh, right.
So all the stuff that I pull from is from the Thai Force tradition of Theravada Buddhism, and so it's a okay. Yeah, so it's a monastery from that tradition that's in northernish California.